accountant with Arthur Andersen, obviously many years ago in South Africa, and has since become was the CFO of Tiger Brands. And David, I'll let you continue from there.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for having me. First thing you're going to obviously notice is I don't speak like many of you. That's because I'm from the deep south, but I am originally from South Africa. I've been living here in America for 50 years now, and I am what you would call a chartered accountant, not a certified public accountant, which is what you call certified public accountants in the rest of the world. America calls them CPAs, but everywhere else you're a chartered accountant. I started my career at Arthur Andersen, which is kind of interesting because, as you probably all know, that they don't exist anymore. But I started there, and then I very quickly moved out and went to one of my clients. As your professor just stated, I left them, and I've ended up in my first major job was as the CFO of a very large public listed company, the largest food producer in Southern Africa, a multi-billion-dollar company. And I did that for a number of years, gave that up, and then started my own businesses. So around 2000, or just before that, I started my own company in South Africa, and then came across here and expanded it into the US. And that was a technology company. Came here to Northeast Tennessee, strange little place, but it's a good place if you don't want to mess with any of the big players in the industry, which is what I did. Came here, started the company, and then about 2 years ago, sold the company to Sharp Corporation, which is a large electronics company out of Japan. So I sold out to them. They took over. I stayed working for them for about 6 months, which was the worst 6 months of my life. Wouldn't want to do that again. And then since then, I've been really doing my own thing with a number of other businesses that I own in properties and in leasing and financial businesses. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you, David. Next, I'll introduce Alex Sewell, who is a graduation of Appalachian and also our graduate program and a CPA. And Alex, you can tell us a little bit about your background.
For sure. Hey, y'all. My name is Alex. I graduated from the undergrad program at App in 2017, and I went back and did another year to get my master's in accounting and take my CPA exams. And so I left Boone in 2018 and moved back closer to where I grew up in Asheville, North Carolina. And I worked in the audit department of the Asheville office for Dixon Hughes Goodman for 2 years. I worked on manufacturing clients, nonprofits, some public and private banks, and I did a lot of employee benefit plan audits. And in December of 2020, I decided to make a transition to the nonprofit sector. And now I am a senior accountant at Pisgah Legal Services, and we offer free legal services to residents in Western North Carolina who would not otherwise be able to afford it. So I'm happy to answer any questions about my experience in public accounting, why I transitioned out, nonprofit world, anything like that, but happy to be here.
And lastly, I'd like to introduce Danielle Robinson, who is also a graduate of Appalachian and our graduate program in accounting. And she used to be at Deloitte, but has now transitioned to be an internal auditor, and I'll let her discuss her background.
Hi, everybody. My name is Danielle. So like Dr. Imana said, I attended App State and graduated undergrad in 2018, and then stayed for the master's program, got my CPA license in 2019. So from there, I went to Deloitte in Charlotte, and I served as an auditor, primarily serving one retail client the entire time. But I did have some experience with a non-public small client for like a month. So after I made it to senior, I made the decision to switch over to something different. So now I am an internal auditor at Bright House Financial but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you guys, gals, folks, I guess. I'm going to open the floor to questions if any of you have any questions for any or all of our panelists. And if not, I'm going to start with Laura. Did you have a question? Go ahead.
Yes. What was like the moment that you decided, okay, I've had enough of public accounting. I want to move to industry. Like, what was that moment?
And we'll start, all three can answer. We'll start with David again and go down the line.
Well, for me, it's a fairly easy question to answer, in that when I started in public accounting in South Africa, to become a chartered accountant, you have to go and work for a public accounting firm. You have to work for 3 years, what they call articles, which is like a traineeship, and they pay you next to nothing. I'll just let you know that. I made about $200 a month working for them when I was working for them. Now, that would have been in the early 1990s, but still, that, if you work that out, that's not a lot of money. And so I knew out the gate that I didn't want to stay in public accounting. It wasn't what I went in, I didn't want to stay with Arthur Andersen or any other firm. I wanted to use it as a stepping stone, which is what most chartered accountants in South Africa certainly do. They get their training, and quite frankly, it was the best training I've ever had. Those 3 years, I actually stayed for 3.5 years in the end, because I was waiting for a really good opportunity to move into a good company. So for me, it was a stepping stone. I knew I had to do it. I certainly did do it. It was hard work. We worked average of 80-hour weeks, and we got paid $200. So.
Alex, how about you? When did you make the decision to move on?
Sure. So that's a really good question. So I went into public accounting knowing I likely wasn't going to stay in public accounting, as I feel like most people do. But I will say, I'm not going to bash it, because the 2 years that I was there, I gained so much knowledge, so many connections as far as like networks within the region. And the exposure that I got within public accounting was something that I'll probably never get in a private accounting job. I was able to work on, a variety of different clients and industries and see, what kind of interested me, what I hated. And the firm that I worked with was really good about listening to me on what I did have an interest in, and they worked hard to schedule me on those clients in the future. So I really was appreciative of that. 2020 was an extremely hard year for a variety of reasons. One thing I really liked about public accounting, especially being an auditor, was the team environment. Traveling with your team, going on site and meeting a client, working hard while you're there, but also having balance outside of work when you come back home. And when we switched to full remote, it was just something that I was not able to attain for myself. Some people were able to balance it a little bit better than I was, but I just became kind of overwhelmed with that. And I also had a little bit of a social reckoning with myself in 2020, where I felt like I needed to do something to give back to others in my community. And so I made the transition to fiscal legal services because I felt like it would give me an opportunity, even if it is on the back end, to help those that are less fortunate in Western North Carolina and see the amazing work that the organization does and be a part of it. So I am proud of switching out of public, but at the same time, I don't regret going into it at all.
Danielle, what about you?
Yeah, so similar to Alex, I think before I went into public accounting, I always knew that I wanted to at least make it to senior, and that was always a goal of mine. And then at that point, I would reassess and determine if I wanted to stay any longer. But when 2020 happened, work-life balance had always been a struggle for me. But I feel like when we switched to a full remote environment and it just became to where I could never put my computer away, I was really struggling with that. And I think that was pretty much like when I made my decision, and I knew that I was in a different place in my life where like I needed to also focus on just like my personal life and stuff. So I wanted to make sure that I got out in time that they could replace me before going into busy season. So I made the decision to transition over the summer. But also, like what Alex was saying, I definitely don't regret any of the experience that I had at Deloitte. Like I feel like now in my current job, I don't feel like I'm learning as much. And I feel like every single day at Deloitte, I was learning something new, or I was always being challenged. So it was an overall like very good experience. I think it was just more of like a personal situation where I could not figure out how to make the differentiation between like turning off your computer and being done for the day. So I knew for myself I needed to leave.
So it sounds to me like all three of you, at least in public accounting, and had an issue to some extent with the work hours and the work-life balance. And you all three started somewhere different afterwards. Would you speak a little to the extent to which you found your work-life balance and the working conditions changed in the next position you took after public accounting? And we'll go back and start with David again.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Obviously, in my case, we didn't have much choice in public accounting. You pretty much, to become a chartered accountant, you had to put in the hours, and whatever they requested you to do, you did. I don't regret that though, because I think it did two things. One is it taught me to work really hard and long hours, which is sometimes necessary. It's probably not a good idea to work 80 hours a week continually, though, not for any reason. But it did teach me that. It also, and I didn't state this earlier, but it really gave me a lot of experience in all the different types of industries. I'm trying to think back, but I probably had 20 to 25 different clients over the 3.5 years that I worked there, from anything really small to some really large public companies. So that really gave me a lot of experience. Now, moving into my next sort of jobs, my number of hours worked maybe didn't decrease by much, but it was more in my own control. And I think that's the thing. Most times your job hours are really in your control, even if you think they're not, they really are. So it's up to you to strike that work-home kind of balance and pleasure kind of balance. I, for one, right throughout my career, have not done a good job of that. My daughter's listening to me right now, she'll know. I tended to work far more hours than what I should have. And only in the last few years, since I've sort of semi-retired and don't have to do the kind of job that I have been doing for many years, I've been able to strike that balance a little better. But it's something to really watch. And I would encourage everybody to try and keep to sort of a reasonable work schedule.
Thank you, David. Alex, what about you?
Yeah, so at my new job, I definitely work less hours. Not to say I'm not busy in my current position, because I am trying to keep up with various grant reporting deadlines and billings, other time-sensitive requirements that come up throughout the month and at quarter end, but it's a different kind of busy. I'm not working on weekends anymore, which I'm so thankful for. And, while I am a non-exempt employee at my office, I don't say I crush like 50, 55, 60-hour weeks like I would during busy season at my old job. I guess that is one thing to note. Like, accountants are considered by and large across the board a professional position in an organization. And if you are, a senior accountant or a controller, an accounting manager, you are going to be in a position where you're probably exempt from overtime. And that's just the nature of the position. And, there are days and deadlines that happen, and you might have to work, a couple hours in the evening. But I've never, especially now, found it something that has just been completely undoable for me. I do feel like I have a lot of flexibility in my position now, and I don't feel bad taking vacation time like I did when I was at DHG. I think that was not only just my brain telling me to feel bad about it, but also like the fact that we were having a staffing shortage there too. But that's just unhealthy. Like, you need to take personal time to be effective in your role at work. You know, once you get to the point where you're working like 65 or 70 hours in a week, I just feel like it's kind of hard to be super productive at that point. So yeah, I don't think I've broken 50 hours since being at Pisgah Legal Services. The scope of the job has changed and I still work hard, but it's like a different kind of working hard, if that makes sense.
Thanks, Alex. Danielle?
Yeah, so I have only been in my position for about 2 months, so I don't have much to say about this, but I do know from my experience so far, it seems like the work-life balance is so much better. Like, I'm actually able to take an hour for lunch, so like I can go eat and run and exercise and stuff. So I feel like that overall like puts me in a better mood for the day. They also are very good about deadlines and stuff, because it's not like the one deadline where we have to file by. It's like if we have like specific audits that we're working on, it's more of an internally set deadline. So if they feel like you're being overworked, they seem to push it back. That way you don't feel overwhelmed, or they'll make sure to put extra people on. So it's pretty nice knowing that like you don't have to pull that 80-hour week to like make something happen, that they're going to work with you, so that you still feel like you're able to like have a life outside of work. So that's been my experience so far, and hopefully it continues like that, but it's been good.
Thank you. Does anyone else have questions before I have plenty of questions? Go ahead, Garrett.
Hi, I have a question for Alex. I'm curious to hear more about the nonprofit that you work at now and how you got into working with underprivileged people and like what that's like for you.
Yeah, so I work for Pisgah Legal Services. That they've been around since 1978 in Asheville. They started as like 3 employees, and in 2020 they experienced some rapid growth, and we're just at around 100 now, and we'll probably be at around 125 sometime in the middle of next year. I, heard about them when I was growing up, because I grew up in Madison County, which is a very impoverished section of Western North Carolina. A lot of the kids I went to school with were the types of families that we help now, whether that be through a housing issue or a domestic violence issue, an immigration issue, a Medicare or Medicaid or disability issue. And so really the mission of Pisgah Legal Services and how I could connect it back to the people that I grew up with really inspired me to take the dive with them and go out of my comfort zone and work with an organization that I previously wouldn't see myself being at. And something I've noticed since being there is that while I am on the back end of the work, I'm, an administration person. I'm helping out not directly with the clients, but helping administer these grants and keep track of finances. It really is like a crucial role for people to be able to do this. And they place a lot of trust in me, and they really value my opinion, and I know they value me and having me. And while I'm not that experienced, they definitely, look upon me to help with some of these more complex, like budgeting questions and issues that we have to solve during this rapid period of growth. And so when I was saying earlier that like the work has changed, you're going from being an auditor where you're looking at the work that people have done throughout the year to being the person that's actually doing this work. And so in audit, you learn about materiality and it's really high for some organizations, depending on how much money they make. And when you're an actual accountant at an organization, like there isn't really materiality. You want to get it as exact as possible. And so it's a different mindset to be in. And I think it's just as challenging where I am now, because I'm, really helping with a lot in this growth and coming up with new spreadsheets to track a various grant or a billing. So I am appreciative of the hard work. I can see how much it's helping people. They're really good with connecting me back to the mission and connecting me with attorneys and social workers that are actually doing the frontline work. So I know that what I'm doing is helping other people, and it gives me a motivation outside of just compensation, which was something that I was very clearly missing when I was an auditor, and I really appreciate now.
That's a really good point. I often tell my students that one of the things that I think is the greatest about my job is that I'm actually getting paid to help people. I get paid to help students and help influence their lives. And that's a wonderful part of our job. And not a lot of people feel that.
Right.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, you could like bore yourself to tears. Like if you're an accountant just working on a spreadsheet for forever and not really being able to connect it to something bigger, whether that's, the business and taking ownership of the business, whether it's a nonprofit and taking ownership of the mission, you've got to like do something outside of just the routine tasks to really keep you invested in it. And you did that through teaching, and you're able to help others. Like I was just really soul searching for that when I was an auditor, because I'm learning a lot, but I'm also just cranking through these audits. And I know like hours are timed and I have to budget myself really carefully. And I just needed a switch from that mindset to where I was doing to where I feel like I'm helping someone. And so that's my motivator as a person.
Does anyone else have a question? Like I said, I have tons of questions. So.
Hi, I had a question for David. I know you mentioned that you started out in South Africa, and I was wondering how the business culture differs between there and here.
Yeah, that's an interesting and good question, because I didn't really know how that was going to be when I moved here. It's kind of, you jump on a plane and you come across here and you think, we both speak English, although we don't. It's very, very different. So, and of course, it's difficult for me to comment across the whole of America. I live in Tennessee. I've worked I've worked in a couple of states, mainly Tennessee, Virginia, North Carolina, and more recently South Carolina. But in those states, what I can say is the business culture is such that it's a lot easier to run a business here. The opportunities are greater. Your marketplace is huge. You just can't believe. I think if one understands how big the US market is, it is really, really big. I think the big thing for me coming here is the opportunity that if you work hard and you put your mind to something and you have a good plan, I believe very strongly in business plans and strategy, that if you do that and you put your mind to it and get it done, you can really be successful here. South Africa, not necessarily. You've got to have a little bit of luck there. Whereas, here I think luck maybe plays a very small part in it here. In South Africa, the culture and business world is pretty difficult. There's a lot of bureaucracy, there's a lot of red tape, and then the whole area around labor, which the businesses I ran here were labor intensive. We sold services, technology services. So I had a lot of professionals working for me. But labor here, I was floored that you could hire and fire a person. In South Africa, you got no chance of firing a person. I was CFO of a very, very large company. We had about 250,000 employees in South Africa. when I left, and you couldn't fire anyone. You would go through a huge process to get rid of someone. Even if they stole and it was blatant and they were caught red-handed, you would not be able to fire them. So in that environment, it's very difficult to run a company, because you're ending up with potentially not really good people, and you've got no way of disciplining them or anything else. So overall, living here, and you've got great opportunities. Just understand it's a real blessing living in America.
Anyone else? Alex mentioned that, you know, in 2020, he started thinking about the transition, and Danielle, you were still at Deloitte, and David, you have ongoing businesses. Can each of you speak a little bit, and we'll start with Danielle since she hasn't gone for a minute. And can you speak to how the pandemic impacted practice? You know, how it impacted you when you were at Deloitte, because you were still at Deloitte in March of 2020. And so how did that seem to change what was going on in accounting, public accounting? Oh, I think she might be frozen. Either that or she's really still. I'll switch the question to Alex, and maybe she'll realize that she's frozen.
Yeah. So yeah, in March was when it was like right after or right before St. Patrick's Day was when we went fully remote. And you know, the transition to remote work wasn't too hard, just because accounting firms nowadays, especially the larger ones, have such a robust technology base in place. You know, we had a client portal where people were able to upload their information to us. We had just established Microsoft Teams, and so we were all able to learn how to use that for various Teams meetings and planning on different engagements. I think what kind of motivated me in 2020 was a couple things. I really liked the additional perks that my accounting firm provided to, you know, make the life of public accounting much easier, especially during busy season. You know, we got free lunches most of the time. On Fridays, they catered lunch in for us. We had happy hours that were paid for. I got to travel and rack up hotel points like on my own credit card, and could go and get away from my house and work in the hotel room instead of having to come home and work a crazy amount of hours. So all of that, when we went fully remote and weren't able to go to client sites anymore, it just became centralized, like at my dining room table in my apartment. I didn't have an office. I didn't have a separate space to retreat to. I was just working on a dining room table, and I would get up at 5:30 or 6, walk over to my couch and sit down, and I could look over and I would still be able to see my laptop there, like waiting for me. So because I didn't have that separation or that boundary like I do now when we moved into a house, like a separate office space, it just really blended together and made it very hard to separate myself from my work. And, you know, the public accounting firm, DSU was good about saying, you know, take GL, take a break, relax, like, but what are you gonna do when you're in quarantine? You know, I could watch a TV show, I could go walk outside, but everything was shut down. So it just really all compounded on each other. And, you know, the things that I just didn't like about public accounting really came to the forefront. And it just made me eager to search for other options. And in December, I was presented, or in November, I was presented with this option, and I took it up. And you know, I could have stayed another year, I could have lasted longer, but I just felt like it was time. And so, yeah, I think it was just like the quarantine and isolation of the job that really kind of, you know, threw me over out of public accounting.
Thank you, Alex. Danielle, are you back? I can see you blinking now, so I think you
I
might
am.
frozen.
Sorry, I've been having bad internet. My bad, but I'm back.
Yeah, how the pandemic affected your work at Deloitte.
It definitely amplified all the bad traits I feel like about work. We actually got sent home a week before we filed originally, like my first year there. So that was a scramble, just trying to figure out like how to adjust, but also like how to file our report and time, I guess. So that was really difficult. And then by the time the second busy season rolled around, I feel like there were things that our firm, like they were trying to do to help us, but like, for example, like with what Alex was saying about getting free lunch, like we used to get that all the time, free lunch and dinner when we were working in the office. And then when everybody became remote, like people were also working in different states, like working wherever they wanted to. And so I guess it caused some tax problem to where they weren't able to give us meals anymore. And so I remember it would be like midnight and I'd be like, okay, I need to get something to eat because I'm going to be up for like a while. And I would be trying to make myself dinner, but it was like we didn't have time to go to the grocery store. So I was going like without eating unless someone like my mom and like my fiance would bring me food over. But that was pretty much like how that was happening. And then we would try as a team to still make things fun. And like we had like a workout challenge. And I remember I had like a silly goal of just trying to get 20 minutes for myself in to do that. And like I could not meet my goal like at all for the week to even have 20 minutes for myself. So I feel like there was like a point, like I think at the end of busy season where I was just like, I cannot do this again, like for like my mental health, like it just was not okay. But I think if 2020 didn't happen the way it was, I think I probably still would have been there.
Okay, that's interesting because I think the hope would be that most of these students who are in here today when they graduate will be, we hope, past pandemic time anyway. David, you have a very different perspective, I would imagine, as a business owner on how you were affected by the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, the large company that I ran and owned, I'd sold just before the pandemic, which that was a huge blessing. Because I think if I hadn't, you know, I had 120 people working for me at the time. There's a lot of responsibilities towards people that you've got to take. So I'm very grateful that I didn't have to do that. My own personal life, though, was I've always had an office at home, and I've always worked remotely. So, and being in the technology industry, none of this stuff's new to me. It's the way I ran our company and how I try to get up the companies that we service to run their company. So that didn't really change. I think and some of the businesses that I am involved in made them a lot more difficult. Like I am in property. I do rent properties. Well, you know, with the whole moratorium on paying rents and things like that, it's been interesting. Because, you know, as a landlord, you've also got your bills to pay. And it doesn't seem like many people realize that. So that's a difficulty. And I certainly feel for smaller landlords that if they weren't paid rent, how do they pay their bills? So that was one area. The other area that I was able to spend a bit more time was actually, I do some online trading. And with the market going all over the place, it was an opportunity to use some of your, you know, one's financial and accounting background and investment background and make some money. So I always look at life that if something changes, there's always an opportunity. And if you're a positive person, look for the opportunities in life and take those instead of complaining about the negative.
That's a good point. I'm sure the pandemic has created a lot of opportunities for people. But I'm sure a lot of people haven't taken advantage of them either. Does someone else have a question? I could ask questions all day, I suppose. I'm going to ask what some of you may be interested in, particularly the students. Alex and Danielle were both very successful with the CPA exam. And I know I've talked to Danielle at some length about what she did. And Danielle's actually come in before and talked to one of my graduate classes about what she did to be successful. But I'd like to hear a little bit from both of you about why you think you were successful with the CPA exam and what you think you did maybe differently than some of your peers. And I'll start with Danielle.
Yeah, so I think the short answer is just I knew I wanted it, and so I made it happen. And in order to do that, I know, because I was taking it at the same time that I was in grad school, so I would set aside time, like every day, I think like 3 or 4 hours, and I would really go into, because I use Becker for everything, and so like I would watch the lectures, I would take notes, and then almost as if I was studying for a test, like for school, I would go back through and I would read the notes every day. That way I was refreshed with the information and I wasn't leaving. But I really just made it a point, like even if something really fun was happening, I was like, I can do it later, or like I'll reward myself with going out with my friends if I get this done. So like I always just motivated and made that a priority. And I think seeing some of my friends that weren't as successful, I think that it was almost the flip side, because they were more focused on like either getting like some other work done for school, or they would want to go out, and they didn't really focus as much on trying to accomplish like the little goals. And then if they didn't feel like they were prepared to go take the test, they didn't want to either like pay the fee to reschedule it, or they just didn't want to reschedule it. And so they would wing it, and then it just didn't go well for them.
My recollection is that you used something big kind of as a carrot for yourself out there to try to get you to pass the exam the first time. Do you want to talk about that?
Oh yeah. So I think like, cause we got a reward, I guess, like from Deloitte, we would get an extra bonus. So I went and I got a dog. That was my first thing. And then I also got a purse. And so anytime I would get something big, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to go treat myself. So that always was in the top of my head, was that I could have it if I passed everything.
And I frequently tell my students to have carrots out there to reward themselves with, to try to motivate them to get things done. And I thought you're doing that was a great way to help motivate you do the actual work for the CPA exam.
Absolutely.
How about you, Alex? How were you so successful?
Yeah, I mean, similar to Danielle, I just built time in while I was at grad school. I treated it kind of like an extra class. Like I went to the library, and if you're lucky to get Becker or Gleim, they really do a good job of just laying out the key pieces that you need to actually pass the exam. I was told this by, I can't remember who, but it's not a test of your knowledge as it is a test of your patience and your commitment towards the exam. You know, if you just read through the study materials and, you know, take the practice questions, actually attempt the crazy questions at the end, like you're really setting yourself up for a good base to go in and take these exams with. And the people who I know that had issues with it were people who didn't kind of lay out like a timeline for themselves. Like it's easier if you like look at a calendar and you say, okay, I've got this many months before I take FAR. Like this is what I need to do each day. I can take a break on Sunday. I can study just a little bit on Saturday, but this is what I need to do to be able to pass it that first time. And I really just committed myself to that. And I also, you know, dangled a carrot of doing a cross-country trip for 5 weeks with my boyfriend when I got out of grad school, and took reg and barely passed reg, and, you know, made it all work so I could just go on that trip and not have to think about accounting for once.
Yeah, so you had a carrot hanging out there as well.
It's always helpful to do that, even if it's just like small ones for passing. Like the portions of the exam. Like you should treat yourself like before just throwing yourself back into it to kind of motivate yourself to do it. And it does create a habit after a while too. Like once you start studying and you keep doing it, like it will become habitual for you, because you'll be like, I don't want to blow this. Like I've already put 30 hours into studying for this. Like I'm going to go spend 3 more hours going over another section today. So practice makes perfect.
Yeah, that's a good point. David, I don't know anything about becoming a chartered accountant other than what you told us, which is that you had to have the 3 years experience. Was there an exam or a test like we have the CPA exam?
Yes, there is. It's a really extremely difficult test. The biggest difficulty with it, which I'm glad I wrote it and got it done fast, but you had to. They only gave it once a year, so it was over 3 days, the last 3 days in March every year, and you had to know everything for all 3 days. So it wasn't a question of, well, this is accounting, this is tax, this is. You actually had to know everything. It was a five hours written each day, so 15-hour in total. It was a really brutal exam. And in South Africa, the pass rate when I was doing it was around 40%. So you can imagine you studying at university. This is what you're doing. I mean, it took many people 5-6 years to actually pass it. And yeah, it took a lot of commitment. But I like what I think Danielle and Alex said, in that I think anything in life is about hard work and commitment. And you've got to be committed, put the commitment in, put the time in. You know, it's a relatively short period of time in your total life. So just stop going to parties and, you know, and put the commitment in. Guess what? You know, once you've passed it, it does change a lot in your life going forward. So it's really worthwhile just putting that in. And I mean, I look back now, and it's a small part of my life now, accounting, but it certainly was a huge part of my life, and certainly the base of where I am now and how I got here.
Well, and I frequently tell students that many accountants go on to become entrepreneurs, that you don't have to live in the world of accounting for the rest of your lives. And you're a prime example of that. You went on to start your own, you know, set of successful businesses, and you are no longer technically, I guess, working in just accounting.
Yeah, I think that's the real thing that I loved about accounting. It gives you a base, and certainly all the broad subjects that one studies, it gives you a base that you can go into pretty much anything. And certainly you understand things like systems and how systems work, so that you can make your businesses more efficient, more effective, more profitable. How best to use, you know, resources. Resources are scarce. How that pays off. Those are things that you learn. And then obviously, you know, everything in a business is driven on cash flow. And so as an accountant, you learn all about cash flow, and it's probably the most critical thing you can learn. Money comes in, money going out, and what's left. And you know, it's a basic concept, but I think that the bulk of people in the world don't understand it. The other big aspect, I think, of an accountant is risk and reward. I think if you can understand risk and reward, I think a lot more people might go into a business and start something. But that's something as an accountant you learn risk and you learn reward. And you know, today, you know, I still do some accounting, which is kind of, you know, yeah, I've got my QuickBooks and all the rest that I keep, and I keep my books on. I also, which is my daughter finds kind of strange, but all my life I've done my own corporate tax returns for my companies, and all my companies today I still do them, and I still often would prepare financial statements. I certainly look at them every month when I was running a company. And I think just understanding accounts, being able to actually put them together, talk to accountants and understand what they're saying to me. But I also liked something that Alex said, as an accountant, and if you've ever got opportunity, always look for ways that you can improve things. Don't just sit back and do the books and make your debits and credits balance. That's great, yeah, but that's the basis. That's what what you've got to do. It's the adding value side of things. Look for that all the time and never be quiet. When you see something that doesn't make sense, or just, man, why are we spending money on this? Why are we doing this? Raise it and go and fix it. Because that's where you're gonna get ahead in your careers. And certainly where I moved very fast through the corporate world was just adding value.
That's a really good piece of advice. As we're winding down the last few minutes, Danielle, there she is. Do you have any advice that you'd like to give we have both undergrad and grad students in here today. Anything that you think you've been successful in your career thus far and with the CPA exam, and you were successful in our grad program. Danielle actually co-authored a couple of papers with me, and anything you'd like to say that you think could help our existing students?
Yeah, I think the number one thing is just always ask questions. And if you feel like you need to reach out to someone, I feel like that's where you're going to find the most help. Like, I know, like, personally, like in undergrad, I didn't really understand that. But then, like, by the end of like junior year and senior year, if like I was stuck with on something, like on an assignment, I would reach out to my professors. And I feel like when you're also building that relationship, like, you can get more out of it. Like, I know, like you were just saying, like, me and you got to write a paper. And so I feel like take advantage of relationships that you can get, but always reach out, because you never know what's going to happen out of, like, as an outcome.
Yeah, we definitely tell our students to develop relationships with the faculty in the department. And we have such a good faculty. I feel like the majority of them are willing to do whatever they can. And so that's a really good point, to make sure you know them, go by their office hours, reach out to them, and develop those relationships. Alex, how about you?
Yeah, in that same line, pick mentors while you're in college, but also when you get into your first job, pick some really strong, whether they're formally assigned or you just informally really vibe with people that are older than you, that have been through it, that have done it, that you can kind of lean on during stressful times. You can ask stupid questions too. And really just like confide in them and know that, what you're doing is literally drinking from the spigot. If you are in public accounting, you're learning a lot. You're learning an incredible amount of information, like on a daily and weekly basis. And it's good because it helps you make better decisions in the future about what you like and what you don't like. And it's okay to be stressed. It's totally natural. And yeah, just find someone to confide in that stress with, and that'll be immensely more helpful than just trying to do it solo.
David, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I think just one thing, when you start looking for a job, and you go out looking for a career, etc., make sure that you're very deliberate in where you go and what you do, and don't get stuck in something. It's neat to hear Alex say, he got into something and then he left it and went somewhere else. Don't be scared to leave a company and go somewhere else. There are too many people get stuck in what they're doing, and it's just a rut, and they don't enjoy it, and they're not learning anything, but they just keep doing it. Don't do that. You've got your whole life ahead of you. Just take the risk, go and leave. And one of the key things for me, what I did, and I would suggest you do this, is interview the boss that you're going to go and work for. You must interview them. Make sure that they're the person that you want to work for, and that there's someone that can teach you something constantly. The people that I worked for and taught me so much, I've got so much to be thankful for. But that's really what my advice: find people that you can work for that are going to really teach you.
And I would add to that, when you do leave your positions and go on to something else in your future careers, maintain as many of those past relationships as you can, because you never know when they're going to be valuable, or you may need to restart those relationships and you may want to go work back. I think, David, actually, you started and left Tiger Brands and then went back to Tiger Brands as the CFO, right?
Yes, I think that's a really important point. and something I've always tried to teach my kids as well. Don't ever burn a bridge. Never leave a place in a negative way at all. And so in terms of that, always give adequate notice, if not twice the notice that you should do. Any employer who wants you to go to them as a new employer and wants you to leave your current employer immediately and not prepared to give you that space, you don't want to work for that employer, because they're not being fair to you, and that's not the way you want to treat an employer. So always treat people well and leave those bridges as real bridges. I absolutely agree with that. I never burnt a bridge, and yes, I left the company and I went back again. And I went back as the CFO, which, it was one of those. I'm glad I left, because I don't think I would have been the CFO if I'd stayed. So sometimes you've got to leave to go back, and in doing that, you actually jump a few positions.
That's a really good point as well. We're supposed to